Hello and welcome to Simply inTAXicating. Next month, Union Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley is going to present the third budget of the present NDA government. As we all know, a budget speech consists of two parts, that is Part A and Part B. Part B basically deals with the taxation aspect, which is eagerly awaited by the industry experts and professionals. In the past few episodes, we have been relentlessly covering several aspects of taxation and the related expectation from Budget 2016. But in this episode, we are going to focus on Part A. Yes, Part A, which deals with the socio-economic issues, often termed by the experts as soft issues. But honestly speaking, these are the hard issues because they hit the public really hard. It is hardly anybody's guess that Government of India's expenditure on the social issues is way below than the global average. And in certain parameters, in fact, we are even poorer than the sub-Saharan nations. Now coming to the social issues, social pundits often say that programs like Right to Education has actually become Right to School. Programs like Right to Job has become Right to Wait for Jobs. In this episode, we are going to understand and analyze where we stand on these issues from the budgetary perspective and also take an audit of the budgetary allocation. Like any other previous budget, most importantly, we will also try to understand what realistically we can aspire from Budget 2016. To discuss all these issues, today we have four critical eyeballs in our studio. Our first guest is Dr. Reena Ramachandran, former CMD, Hindustan Organic Chemicals, currently member Task Force Performance Management Division, Cabinet Secretariat. She is also an independent director in the board of several companies and has an experience of over 40 years in different sectors. Our second guest is Dr. Suraj Kumar, mentor, Neeti Foundation. Dr. Suraj has huge experience in the development sector and has worked with United Nations for 15 years before joining Neeti Foundation. Then we have Mr. Naresh Minocha, consulting editor of taxindiaonline.com and a seasoned journalist with an experience of 35 years. Our fourth guest of the discussion is Mr. Sandeep Ahuja, a former IRS officer and founder and CEO of Operation Asha, an organization working relentlessly for eradication of tuberculosis, not only in India, but also many other countries. So welcome everybody to this episode. So I'll begin with Mr. Sandeep Ahuja asking this question. Sir, India spends around 1.2% of its GDP, which is, we hold around 176th rank, which is in fact, our GDP ratio of expenditure is worse than Pakistan and even worse than Bangladesh. Bangladesh is much better than us. We have a very beautiful and idealistic campaign called universalization of healthcare. But on the contrary, the budgetary allocation is constantly declining. Do you realistically see that there is any, chances or expectation of an increase in the budgetary allocation in 2016? And let me also add, sir, we always the government falls in romance with the cess. Obviously, it's a pain for the public, but it's a love affair for the government. Do you also see the possibility of introduction of health cess, which was proposed in the National Draft Health Policy 2015?
I will mention two issues here that we need to tackle at every level. And when I mean every level, I mean you start with the national level, but then you have to go down to the panchayat and the district level organizations. First, you rightly said, 172nd on allocation for health. Boy, is it India? Is it the upcoming superpower? Or is it something else? Realistically speaking, if you go by these figures, it's definitely something else.
It sounds like as if we are talking about some other country.
Absolutely. And it's not just health. Duke University made a video of an area where we work in central India, in Madhya Pradesh, a tribal area. And a secretary of South African Ministry of Health saw it 3 days back and he said, Sandeep, this is pre-industrial revolution. We're talking about the fourth revolution. India has missed in some of the areas the first one. So that's one issue. However, it's not just about funding. Funding definitely has to go up. We also have to see where does that funding go?
Exactly. Our biggest problem is not only the budgetary constraint, but the delivery mechanism.
And simply following up with closed eyes in a single direction. The whole world today talks about multiple bottom lines, multi-bottom line. In India, does anybody bother? I've pleaded and said so many jobs. So it's much more than simply money. It's a mentality. The finance minister is fortunate in one way, that he can talk and he can look at files from every ministry when he allocates funds and tell them, boss, this is not how it's going to work. So we have a long way to go. I'm hopeful. We are hearing the right noises after the new government has come into power. We're seeing some delivery, but I think there needs to be much more done on the delivery side. Big slogans are good. They're good to create hype. They're good to put up aspirations, but we need to deliver now. It's time to deliver. And I hope the finance minister and the prime minister can do it through their philosophy of another budget.
Mr. Minocha, Mr. Ahuja says it's not about the budgetary allocation, but it is about the delivery mechanism and the change in the mindset.
Yeah. What he said is, I perfectly agree with him. It has to be a holistic approach. But coming to funding, let us look at the last major commission on health. It was headed by Mr. Chidambaram. I think it was called National Commission on Macroeconomics and Healthcare. Mr. Chidambaram himself recommended that the funding has to be increased from 1.3% that time to 3%. But he could not do it. So that is the situation. There have been half a dozen previous commissions. We have masters in planning. But the biggest one, and which should be actually the Bible for the India's development, was called Bohr Committee Report, 1946. What did it say? The committee said that the investment in health should be treated as gilt-edged investment, which will give you immediate sustained dividends, not deferred dividends.
That's precisely my questions.
No,
it's a long journey, and why are we so stingy when it comes to expenditure in the social sector?
Doctors, we have acute shortage of paramedics.
As per a latest report, around 2,500 primary health centers, there is not a single doctor there. Dr. Suraj, your views on this?
If I focus
are we going to see any change
let me focus on the facts. It is true that Kothari Commission said 6% on education, and the National Commission on Health Macroeconomics said 3% of the GDP on health. So 9 is mine, is a motto for anyone who wants to talk about social sectors in India. Having
said 9% collectively for the social
6
sector.
plus 3, 9. 9 is mine. But in India, we are also very good at throwing money after a problem. It is a fact that if you look at any average district in India, the plan allocation in a year is about 500 to 600 crores a year. This is plan allocation. Now, if it was a private company that had a turnover in a district of about 600 crores, it would have first class human resources working in that district. There would be proper finance management, there would be proper HR, there will be proper facilities and so on and so forth. Most districts are returning large sums of this 600 crores. Laps back. You look at, because today district treasuries are computerized, if you look at the Udaipur district treasury, they would have received 1,200 crores a year. How much of it is spent? So I think that building capacity...
You have raised a very important point, because there is a lot of variation amongst the states, and some of the states have such poor fund absorption capacity. So it's not just only about allocating the fund, releasing the funds, but also utilizing the funds.
Yeah. And the other is the quality of the absorption.
Yeah, that's important.
So the fact of the matter is states have a big responsibility. Now, while people are analyzing union budgets, it may be useful to look at what the state budgets are doing. Now, if you look at the RBI latest state finance report, whose focus is on fiscal consolidation, you will find that fiscal marksmanship, quality of targeting, ability to realistically assess what will be your expenditure is very, very poor. There are some states that do well, but most states in India, especially the newly created states, have a big problem in capacity. Therefore, I think that it is a especially important issue, specifically with regard to education, health and environmental issues, because the country will end up going in two different directions. The states that will spend better will get more, and the states that do not have capacity and classically have poor human development indicators.
There's no question of cess. You asked about how do you raise resources. We've been always focusing on the amount of budgets and the increase. The basic issue is, number one factor is the money that is coming in, how is it being spent? That is number one. And is it really going to the beneficiaries? Because all government statistics indicates that it is actually not happening, because we have a very poor citizens charter system that operates here. And the second is, why should the cess, the money raised through cess mechanism, which again you're picking up from the public revenue or public resource, and whatever is the budget, the major taxation, whatever amount you collect from the tax, or now of course oil prices are down. I think the current year the government is the most the lucky. They say that all the oil, let's say consuming nations, which are net importers of oil, are going to be the major beneficiaries. Now, where are these resources going ultimately? Now, some of it should go back in the hands of the consumer so that the economy improves. And the second aspect is, why can't this be diverted a large chunk into the social sector? And I think it's a golden opportunity for the government in the current budget, that savings that government is going to make out of this gains they're going to make out of the lowering of oil prices are diverted into these sectors which should benefit large cross-section of the population, create infrastructure. It's not going to happen overnight.
So one question, PM Modi has been talking so much about the digital India. I mean, there's so much noise being generated of that. And there is actually a link can be drawn between digital India and the telemedicine industry. India has an average where they said that there is one doctor for a population of 10,000 people. Do you see there is a potentiality in the telemedicine industry, and is the government serious enough to promote or incentivize players to take up this, opportunity, take this up as an opportunity?
Recently, we met the state TV officer of Uttar Pradesh. We were given an award by the chief minister of the state. The invitation was great. The only thing they said was, please do not bring your technology, Mr. Ahuja. Because our technology tracks every event, every time my health worker and the patient have to meet, both of them have to give simultaneous fingerprints. They don't want it. They don't want accuracy. A digital India, with lots of investment in computers will do what investment in private sector or the current investment in healthcare has been doing, with 2,500 PHCs having no doctors. I'll go a step more than that, ahead of that. There was an experiment in Karnataka using biometric fingerprint attendance system. 72% of the doctors never came for duty after they were posted. 72% of the doctors. It's unfortunate to say, and I know I'll be lynched when I go out, the medical fraternity of this country, be it the private sector or be it the government sector, has held our poor to ransom. So I agree with many of my panelists, especially Dr. Suraj, who says capacity. Of course, I'll add one more thing, motivation.
Dr. Suraj, I have a question for you, that if you look at the past trend of the budget, we have been promoting the insurance sector and rather nudging the middle class to opt out of the public health system and to opt for the insurance-based medical system, which is actually more or less influenced by the US system, where the medical cost is almost unaffordable. So shouldn't the government be focusing more on extending the public health system rather than incentivizing the insurance sector?
There is a study by David Bloom and Rajiv Ahuja which very clearly points out the risk of putting money into all these insurance schemes and in effect subsidizing tertiary health care while not investing significantly in the public health primary and even secondary tertiary health care. But the point is, I would like to make is India, the issue of teacher and doctor absenteeism is not touched by anybody, including by the current government. It's okay to have slogans, but you need to fix the system that is broken. There I do not see much focus either in a union speech or in a state budget speech. Part of the reason is I can assure you the doctor lobby, okay, is significantly more powerful than the defense contractor lobby. Okay, that's point number one. One of the reasons you find very few serious prosecutions for prenatal sex determination is because the protection that is offered by the doctors association.
Hardly in prosecution.
No, I'm just saying they are protected. Okay, now very clearly, in a country where the income gap between the beneficiary and the provider of service, whether it is a teacher or a doctor, is astronomical, probably amongst the highest in the world. How would you expect a system of universal health coverage, okay, to be taken seriously? You can make the announcement, but when the beneficiary is powerless before the service provider, you would probably have some difficulty. So I just think that while we can talk about the funds, while we can talk about the schemes, while we can talk about
so we
the
need
technology,
to empower the service recipient as well.
You need to first of all fix the direct issue of teacher and doctor absenteeism, on which I do not see sufficient attention either in the public policy circles or, with all due respect, in the various budget speeches.
So, ma'am, you have spent so much time in the education sector. So let me ask you, I mean, even the education sector, the government is as stingy as in the healthcare sector. And if you look at the past budgets, again, the allocation is declining, especially in the primary education, which is actually showing a shift of focus of the government, maybe because of the reason that the parents are increasingly opting for private schools. So, I mean, my question is, do you have any expectations? Would there be a substantial allocation in the coming budget?
Now, it's a fundamental right. Now, it's also right to education is there. But the primary responsibility of, it's a state subject also, of the center and the state, is to make the facility available as a community service. Now, that system doesn't exist in India at all. Now, if you look at community service, there are enough examples in the world that's available, and primary education should be entirely handled by the government, totally. Now, you see, slowly we have seen the erosion over a period of time because it's become so lucrative, the primary education, that private sector has stepped in a big way.
Right.
And after all, it's we are an emerging economy. Aspirations of people at all levels, even at the lowest middle class, is that they would like to invest as much as possible on their kids to have the best education. Okay. So they'll say, okay, my child will study only in English medium school and maybe private. So the person says, no, I would prefer that I spend more money and send to private. Why does he say that? Why is it saying? Because of the quality difference. Two reasons. Number one, inadequate accessibility. The girl child, the guy is not able to send the girl too far away, or pass mein koi hai nahi. So therefore, say, okay, I will go to a private school which is closer to my house. So accessibility is important, quality is important, and available to everybody equal level. Enough examples are there worldwide that higher education in any case, whether it is private sector or government sector, they will emerge over a period of time. But the fundamental primary education is for a certain kilometers radius. It should be accessible to people living in that area.
Absolutely.
Now, so that people don't have to go far away place. Now, coming back to the budget position, well, any amount of budget as far as education is concerned is far less. I mean, that's the kind of a definition I would give, because the maximum amount of resources that should really go in, because it's a future of the population of your nation. You're building the right kind of, people who will be actually managing your economy over a period of time. So the fundamentals will have to be very strong. Unless the basic education is very good, I don't think all the great plans that we have, it's really going to work.
Mr. Minocha, I have a question for you. I mean, we get to hear so much about this Skilled India project, and there is a target of training 300 million youth by 2020, which, I mean, as per the government figures, we need around 4.2 lakh crores for training this entire youth. There's also a statistic which says that only 18 to 20% of the youth post-education are actually employable. How are we going to, fill in this gap?
And main thing is the market is not growing. See, you actually, it's a very large issue. You have to have a holistic view of the economy. What's wrong with the economy? You have got the NGO activities, you have the judicial activities, which doesn't let the country develop. There are any number of cases, any number of projects are blocked. But at the same time, you want Skill India, Digital India to come up. It will only create aspirations. No, it will only create not dreams. It will create. It is actually creating a frustration huge frustration. That's why you see mob violence. The joblessness is really scandalous. And wait for the next survey. It will come in a few days from the Labour Bureau, Chandigarh. It will again show either stagnation or a drop.
300 million people to be trained? Sure. Will the industry be able to absorb them? Today we have PhDs without a job. Then we have PhDs plus trained people without jobs. Where are we heading? Right?
So it's not just about the supply, the demand.
Absolutely. Now, what does BRAC do in Bangladesh? They're the biggest employer outside the government. They're the biggest employers. They employ 3.5 lakh people in a country which is 10 times smaller than India in terms of population. When you have tested models, pick up those 10 NGOs which have been awarded by the Shaw Foundation, right? Already vetted in great detail. Pick them up, ask them how many jobs can each one of you create? What is the cost per job created? How much of the recurring cost will go into funding those jobs? Find that calculus, find that equation. You'll be able to create jobs. Jobs which are there for long term. I'm not talking about jobs where I'm supposedly a training agency. I get everyone a job, but after 6 months, 75% of them have no jobs. Right? So M&E, again, all these things have limitations. Why don't you just go to established models that have done well in this country or that have done well in similar locations or similar environments?
I would say that if we agree that the government's own target of 6 plus 3, 9% of GDP should go into education and health, you're looking at an allocation per year of about $181 plus billion a year. It will be a while will we get there. The question is, what do you do? How do you manage your fiscal deficit, which is a cause for concern? Okay, while ensuring that you are able to put more money in the social sectors accompanied by local accountability. Accountability to a joint secretary or a prime minister is not going to make any difference. In India, we are very well known. Target you give, target will be met, nothing will change on the ground. Okay. As far as Skill India is concerned, I personally believe that this is an area which has got huge implications for our country. I have managed skill development programs where, if done well, you do a post-project evaluation, you will find, we did one with Samsung and REC Trichy. We set up skill academies in the private sector. We found that of the 600 youth from very poor families who got trained, after 3 years of the project were paying income tax. So certainly, okay, there is a tremendous scope in focusing on skill development.
Point taken. Dr. Ramachandran, 30 seconds, your closing remarks.
Well, the most critical sector in the budget is the social sector. Now, if we are able to manage to assimilate all our resources together and divert them and target the right kind of sectors, which means the people will have to be looked after, and all sections of the people and all these facilities must reach the adequate access and quality, and for which we need to develop an adequate system, and budget should reflect that happening.
Mr. Minocha, your point.
Yeah. See, the key point is transparency. Without transparency, no investment will succeed.
Yes, leapfrogging is what we need. There's no doubt about it. How do you do it? You have to get down to efficiency, and that can come through change of mindset. Slogans, great. They lead aspirations, they build aspirations. Delivery, and there are examples of delivery. Delhi Metro, Goa-Mumbai train, there are plenty of them. It can be done, it should be done, that's the need of the hour.
So we heard our panelists, and now there can hardly be any argument on the fact that social sector is the most critical sector which deserves utmost importance, be it a state budget or union budget. But the current situation reflects otherwise. Our Union Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, has to walk on a tightrope, balancing between the increasing fiscal deficit and the pressing demands of the social sector. One of the panelists mentioned about the slogan, 9 is mine,
which means that at least 9% of India's GDP should be spent towards the social sector. But unfortunately, there's a long way to go before we achieve that milestone. Our discussion rightly reflected that the real challenge in social sector does not lie in merely increasing the budgetary allocation, but with the gigantic issue of implementation. India's delivery mechanism is so deceptive that targets are achieved, yet the status quo prevails on the ground. Will this change remains the bigger question. We also discussed about the healthcare sector, and one of the prime key takeaways is that unless there is empowerment of the beneficiary of healthcare services, programs like universalization of healthcare will be meaningless. We all know the problem has a long legacy, yet this will be the third union budget of the present NDA government, and therefore we have all reasons to expect the FM to deliver. No doubt this is going to be a crucial budget for all of us. Thank you for watching.